Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 6 of the Quarter Brain Cell Podcast. I'm your host, Voiceover Gray, and today we're going to be talking about the hero ship RMS Carpathia. The year is 1900, the turn of the century. The Cunard Line faced stiff competition from her rival White Star Line, as well as the German lines Neudeutscher Lloyd and Hamburg America Line. Cunard's largest liners as of 1898, the Campania and the Lucania, both had a reputation for their size and speed, sitting around 12,960 gross registered tons, and both held the blue ribbon for the fastest Atlantic crossing. However, Neudeutscher Line, Lloyd, the new liner, the Kaiser SS Kaiser Wilhelm der Grosse, my German is not good, if you haven't noticed. Kaiser Wilhelm der Grosse took the blue ribbon from them in 1897. At the same time, White Star Line was planning the launch of a new 17,000 gross registered ton liner, the RMS Oceanic. In order to keep up with the competition, Cunard ordered the construction of 3 new liners, the SS Invernia, Saxonia, and the topic of today's episode, the RMS Carpathia. Cunard Line determined that rather than trying to beat their competitors in size and speed, they would maximize their profitability in order to remain solvent enough to fend off any takeover attempts by the competing shipping conglomerate called the International Mercantile Marine Co. The 3 new ships, dubbed the Invernia class, were not particularly fast or large, as they were designed for immigrant travelers. But they did, however, provide significant savings in fuel economy. Carpathia was a modified design of the Invernia class, being approximately 40 feet or 12 meters shorter than her half-sisters. Her keel was laid down the 10th of September, 1901, was launched the 6th of August, 1902, and she was finally completed the following year of 1903, with her maiden voyage being May 5th of that year. She began her career with only 2 classes. However, after her 1905 refit, spaces were added to give her the traditional 3-class system of the time. The refit brought her capacity from 1,700 passengers to around 2,450, and increased her gross registered tonnage from 12,900 to more than 13,500. Her career was rather quiet and uneventful, based on my research. However, that would change in April 1912. No one would have guessed that little old Carpathia would go down in history. April 11th, 1912, Carpathia steamed out of New York City, bound for Fiume, Austria-Hungary, which is Rijeka, Croatia today. On board were 240 crew, as well as 120 first-class passengers, 50 second-class passengers, and 565 third-class. Much like the rest of her career, the next few days were rather quiet, though word had definitely gotten around about the maiden voyage of the grand new White Star liner, Titanic. Excuse me. On the night of April 14th, Carpathia was mostly blacked out, her saloons darkened, and most of her passengers sound asleep. Carpathia's wireless operator, Howard Cotton, had missed previous messages from the Titanic. He was on the bridge at the time, and after his shift had ended at midnight, he placed on his headset one final time for a last listen before bed. He received a message from Cape Cod stating that they had private traffic directed towards Titanic. Cotton thought he would try to be helpful, and at 12:11 a.m. of April 15th, he tapped away on his Marconi wireless set, messaging the Titanic in regards to the traffic that Cape Cod had for them. "Good morning, old man. Do you know that a dispatch is for you at Cape Cod?" he tapped out in Morse code. The response he received was truly haunting. "CQD, CQD, SOS, SOS, CQD, SOS. Come at once. We've struck a berg. CQD, meaning come quickly, danger, or help us. Cottam was horrified. Should I tell my captain? He quickly tapped out in response. Yes, quick, responded Titanic. Sorry, it's really hot in here. The little Carpathia had just found herself in the middle of the most infamous disaster at sea. Unbeknownst to Cottam, his small exchange with the Titanic had sparked a race with time. The little Cunard liner would rise to the challenge and push herself to the limit. Cottam sprinted his way to the bridge, determined to pass along the message. The bridge officers were initially skeptical about the seriousness of Titanic's distress call. However, an agitated Cottam, so I have such a hard time pronouncing his name, an agitated Cottam rushed down the ladder to the captain's cabin, waking Captain Arthur Rostron. Captain Rostron initially began to tell Cottam off for his breach in discipline, but Cottam interrupted and informed him of the emergency. Are you certain? Rostron asked. Quite certain, Cottam responded, both breathless and impatient. Titanic is sinking. It is now 12:30 a.m., and Captain Rostron steps to the bridge, fully aware of the severity of the situation, and he begins to bark his orders. Full stop. Send for the engineer. Send for the chief officer. Call all officers. Call all hands on deck and be ready to swing out the boats. To save the Titanic's passengers, Rostron knows he must act drastically, even if it meant endangering his own ship by sailing full steam ahead into the same ice field that had just claimed the mighty Titanic. The crew rise sleepily from their bunks as they put on extra layers to fight the cold. Carpathia has already swung around, course set for the Titanic's last recorded position. Rostron ordered the ship's heat, hot water, and all non-essential machinery and appliances to be switched off to gather as much steam pressure as on the ship's boilers as possible. Her engines thundered at full speed ahead to rescue the wounded Titanic. It's still up for debate on how fast the Carpathia went, given her service speed was about 14 knots, but it's suspected she reached upwards of 15 and a half knots due to the extra steam pressure. All stewards were ordered on duty to prepare blankets, hot coffee, hot tea, and soup for the over 2,000 passengers of the Titanic. The doctors were all ordered to stand by in the dining rooms, and all gangway doors were ordered open and to be ready to bring in survivors. Rostron ordered his sailors up to the deck to keep eyes out. Due to the moonless conditions and the seas at a flat calm, spotting icebergs would be a challenge. Cottam returned the wireless set, informing Titanic that Carpathia was on her way, while Rostron prayed to his god that his ship would not meet the same terrible fate as Titanic. At roughly 1:45 a.m., Cottam received another message from Titanic. Come quickly. Engine room flooded to the boilers. Until now, Captain Rostron had suspected that the Titanic was badly damaged, but assumed she would remain afloat and that all of her passengers, mail, and light cargo would have been transferred to Carpathia and any other ships that may be on scene. But he was now confronted with the horrifying truth that there may be no Titanic left afloat by the time Carpathia arrives. With no other option, Carpathia remains charging forward into the night, only hoping for the best. Cottam had noticed that the Titanic's signal had become significantly weaker and her messages had become garbled and faint. Roughly 20 minutes later, at 2:05 a.m., Titanic had fallen silent. 2:35 a.m. All nerves on board were strained, as the crew speculated what they would find out there on the scene. Would they find Titanic down by the head as passengers were away in lifeboats, or arrive just in time to see the massive liner slip beneath the sea? Time would only tell. On the horizon, Rostron spotted something. There's his light. He must still be afloat, he cried out. In the far-off distance, there was a faint green dot. Hope washed over the crew. Surely it must be the Titanic's starboard green running light. Carpathia quickly alters course and steams toward the light on the horizon, firing rockets at 15-minute intervals to signal that help was on the way. However, at 2:45 a.m., Second Officer James Bissett spots something reflecting the stars dead ahead. He instantly knows what it is, a massive mountain of ice. He shouts out a warning to Carpathia's quartermaster, who swings her helm hard around. The ship slows in the water, and the iceberg slips narrowly past her bow. Once clear of the berg, Rostron orders the ship back up to full speed. However, another berg was spotted, and another, and another. Carpathia must dial back her speed as she dodges and weaves through the growing number of icebergs. Smaller growlers scrape along Carpathia's steel hull as one of her crew shouts, "Hey, fellas, look at the polar bear scratching itself with a hunk of ice." There's a nervous round of laughter, but it does little to lighten the mood. Hope has been diminished as Carpathia slowly navigates through the ice as they spot a green distress flare bobbing in the water, but no sign of Titanic. The green light they had spotted earlier was not Titanic at all, but her flares. At 4 a.m., roughly an hour and a half after Titanic had been claimed by the unforgiving ocean, claiming 1,523 souls, Carpathia arrived at her last location and immediately got to work. For the next 4.5 hours, the crew plucked all 705 survivors from the sea. Even Carpathia's own passengers had begun helping in any way they could, offering warm food and drink, blankets, accommodations, and words of comfort. By 9 a.m., Carpathia had rescued the last survivor of the lifeboats, and with a heavy heart, Rostron ordered the search to be called off, and Carpathia sailed away from the area. After considering options of where to disembark for the passengers, including the Azores, the destination which would cost the Cunard line the least, and Halifax, the closest port, though it was also along an ice-laden route. Rostron consulted with Bruce Ismay and ultimately decided to disembark the survivors in New York City, the original destination of the RMS Titanic. News of News of the disaster rapidly spread on shore, and the Carpathia became the center of intense media attention as she steamed westward towards New York at an average speed of 14 knots. Hundreds of wireless messages were being sent from Cape Race and other shore stations addressed to Captain Rostron from the relatives of the Titanic passengers and journalists demanding details in exchange for money. Rostron ordered that no news stories would be transmitted directly to the press, deferring such responsibilities to the White Star offices, as Cotton provided the details to the Titanic's sister ship, the Olympic. On Wednesday, the 17th of April, the light cruiser USS Chester began escorting the Carpathia to New York. Cotton, by then assisted by Titanic's junior wireless operator, Harold Bride, transmitted the names of third-class passengers to the Chester. Slowed by heavy thunderstorms and fog since the early morning of Tuesday, April 16th, Carpathia finally arrived in New York on the evening of Thursday, April 18th, 1912, under heavy rain. People crowded around the Cunard Pier 54, waiting for Carpathia's arrival. However, she blew past Pier 54 and went beelined it for the White Star Line Pier 59 and offloaded Titanic's 13 lifeboats before proceeding to the Cunard Pier 54. That is the only piece of Titanic that arrived at her destination. It was her 13 lifeboats. For their rescue work, the crew of the Carpathia were awarded multiple medals by the survivors. Crew members were awarded bronze medals, officers silver, and Captain Rostron a silver cup and a gold medal, presented by Margaret Brown. Rostron was knighted by King George V and was later a guest of President William Howard Taft at the White House, where he was presented with a Congressional Gold Medal the highest honor the the United States Congress could confer upon an individual. During the First World War, Carpathia was requisitioned by the British Admiralty for use as a troop transport. She was used to transfer Canadian and American expeditionary forces to Europe. At least some of her voyages were in convoy, sailing from New York through Halifax to Liverpool and Glasgow. Among her passengers during the war years was Frank Buckles, who went on to become the last surviving American veteran of the Great War. Apparently, some point during her enlistment, her long-faded red funnel, custom of the Cunard Line, was painted in battle gray. And sometime prior to March 18th, I can't speak tonight. Sometime prior to March 1918, the entire ship was painted in wartime dazzle camouflage. On July 15th, 1918, Carpathia departed from Liverpool in a convoy bound for Boston, carrying 57 passengers, 36 saloon class and 21 steerage, and 166 crew. The convoy traveled along a zigzag course along with an escort in accordance to procedures against submarine attacks. The escort left the convoy early in the morning of July 17th, and the convoy was cut in half. The Carpathia continued west along with 6 other ships. As the largest ship in the convoy, she assumed the role of Commodore ship. 3.5 hours later, at 9:15 a.m., while sailing in the southwest approaches, a torpedo was sighted approaching on her port side. The engines were thrown in full astern, and the helm was turned hard to starboard, but it was too late to avoid the torpedo. The Carpathia was torpedoed near the number 3 hatch on the port side by the Imperial German Navy submarine SMU-55, followed by a second which penetrated the engine room, killing 3 firemen and 2 trimmers, and effectively disabling her ability to escape, as the engines were rendered inoperable by the second torpedo impact. The explosion severely damaged the Carpathia's electrical gear, including the wireless radio apparatus, as well as 2 of the ship's lifeboats. As a result, Captain William Prothero, in command of the Carpathia since 1916, signaled the other ships of the convoy to send out wireless messages by the use of flags. He then had rockets fired to attract the attention of nearby patrol boats. The remaining convoy steamed away at full speed to elude the submarine. As Carpathia began to settle by the head and list to port, Prothero gave the order to abandon ship. All passengers and surviving crew boarded the 11 lifeboats as Carpathia sank. There were 218 survivors out of the 223 aboard. As the passengers and crew disembarked, Prothero, the chief officer, first and second officers, and the gunners remained aboard the sinking ship, seeing to it that all the confidential books and documents were thrown overboard. The captain then signaled one of the lifeboats to come alongside, and he and the remaining crew members abandoned their ship. U-55 surfaced and fired a third torpedo into the ship near the gunners' rooms, resulting in a massive explosion that doomed the Carpathia. U-55 started approaching the lifeboats when the Azalea-class sloop HMS Snowdrop arrived on the scene and drove away the submarine with gunfire before picking up the survivors of the Carpathia around 1 p.m. The Snowdrop arrived back in Liverpool with the survivors of the evening of the 18th of July. The Carpathia sank at 11 a.m., about 1 hour and 45 minutes after the first torpedo strike. A sad end to a ship dubbed a hero. And that there is the story of the Carpathia. Shorter episode today, but that's basically all I've got. So, YouTube viewers, thank you for watching. I will also be providing an update here quick regarding the SS United States. This comes from Matt JL himself. Matt has told us to, hold on one second. Let me read this off. I'll read off exactly what he says. He says, "Hey, everybody. Reiterating this because I want to get ahead of any doomerism or panic. It's looking like prep is beginning to be done to remove the funnels within the next days or weeks. This looks really bad. It doesn't change our commitment to rescue the ship nor our legal arguments to do so, as they're both earmarked for preservation. Keep it frosty, keep it cool, and use this chance to galvanize your activism and push the urgency home if you have any avenues you have." Basically, in a nutshell, they're prepping to remove the SS United States funnels in Mobile, Alabama right now. This is not a bad thing. It sucks, but it's not a bad thing. Those funnels are, to an extent, designed to be removed for engine work and such like that. So, not terrible. They can be replaced, and if they're preserved, honestly, they could probably be put right back on if we do save the ship. So, not a huge big deal. It sucks to see, but even Queen Mary, her funnels aren't original either. So, worst case, when the ship is saved, if the ship is saved, she just gets new funnels put on. No big deal. So that is pretty much the only update we have on the SS United States right now. Once again, I will be linking the petition in the description. I will also say we're doing a fundraiser for the Trevor Project. If you don't know what the Trevor Project is, look it up. But it is a suicide prevention hotline for the LGBTQ youth. Currently, me and 10 other streamers are doing a fundraiser for them. Currently, we're at $635. So if you scan that QR code down there on the right of your screen, that'll take you there. I will also be linking my personal fundraiser for them. Anything that I raise just immediately gets tossed into the pool. So I'll be also linking my fundraiser in the description as well. Please donate if you have the extra cash. If you don't, not a big deal. Don't worry about it. Make sure you can feed yourself and pay your bills before you go and donate. Thank you for watching, everyone. This has been episode 6 of the Quarter Brain Cell Podcast, and I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.